The production of the 5th generation BMW 3 Series began in December 2004, with customers receiving the launch models in March of 2005. These early vehicles were all saloon models and were coded E90, although the estate version, coded E91, would follow close behind. A coupe and convertible version, coded E92 and E93, followed a year later. You may hear the range simplified to the abbreviation E90X, which refers to all body styles of the 5th generation 3 Series. The production run ended in October 2013, although the saloon and estate model had ended a year earlier to make way for the 6th generation F30 and F31 chassis designation. The 3 Series came with several new features, including run-flat tyres, and the E90X generation was the first BMW 3 Series with optional iDrive system for navigation and infotainment. Assembly of the 3 Series happened across the world, with Leipzig and Munich in Germany being two obvious locations. However, Indonesia, Egypt, Mexico and China were also utilised for production. By the end of 2013, over 3 million units of the 5th generation 3 Series had been produced and sold across all markets, with 2007 being a high point in production of 555,000 units registered. Special mention to BMW's World Touring Car Championship here, as 2007 may have already been in a bumper year for sales, but the car's success was also being seen on track, with the E90 320 Si taking the win for the second year in a row. A 320 Si Special Edition production car was sold that we'll come on to later in the video. A side note for the 3 Series enthusiasts is that the 2006 BMW 3 Series won World Car of the Year, beating the Porsche Cayman S, which took second, and Honda Civic Hybrid, which took third. Moving on to the most common faults across the entire E90X range, we should stress that due to the popularity of the vehicle, we will highlight the most prominent common faults. However, if you feel we've missed anything or experienced any issues worth looking out for, then please add them in the comment section below. Starting with a couple of issues that should appear obvious when viewing a vehicle, a faulty door lock actuator will stop a door opening at the pull of the handle, so check each door on a vehicle that you go to view. On coupe and convertible models, the seatbelt butler can also fail. Wheel speed sensors, ABS units and crankshaft sensors are among some of the more common failures of sensors, causing an engine management light. Water pump and thermostat failure appear to be another common complaint no matter which engine you go for, although repair work can be slightly more costly on the larger engine models due to the tighter workspace. A faulty steering lock is an annoying problem that can not only become expensive, but will render the vehicle inoperable, as the key will not start the vehicle. A software update should resolve the issue on any affected vehicles, although the problem is rarer now as the majority of affected vehicles have been repaired. Separately, an issue with the occupant sensor for the passenger seat is relatively common and will cause the airbag light to stay on. Some owners have fixed this with a software update, others have purchased a bypass lead that fools the car into thinking someone is always sat in the passenger seat. We should note such a device is outside of BMW's original design for the system. Other things of note would be that any vehicle fitted with sports styling and suspension will have a harder ride, and if there is no evidence of the shock absorbers being replaced, they should be on your to-do list. We have personal experience of the E92 at the miles driven, and finding shock absorbers that have completely lost their rebound is not uncommon, usually adding additional stress onto the spring and shortening its service life. It is also very common for owners to replace the original run-flat tyres. If buying a vehicle without them or changing them yourself, make sure you add some form of tyre inflation kit or a spare wheel. As ever, our lists are non-exhaustive, so if we've missed anything that you think might be useful, please add it in the comments below to help others with their search for a used car. Next up are the engines, and although there are a variety of models for this generation of 3 Series, the mix of engines is actually quite slim, with 4 different engine blocks across the petrol range and 2 across the diesels, although their capacity and components vary more widely. We'll start our guide with the diesels, but first a quick reminder that if you want more from the miles driven, you can check out our links below to find our weekly podcast and our website. The 318D and 320D models from 2005 to 2007 were fitted with the M47 D20 TU2 engine, creating either 121 brake horsepower or 161 brake horsepower, with an average of 48.7 to 42.9 miles per gallon. These motors have been around for quite a long time now, and they're fairly old tech compared to the newer, more complex diesel engines, which some buyers may prefer. 2 key areas to look out for are the swirl flaps and the engine breather pipe. Aside from this, there are 2 large bills that can arise from these motors. These are the dual mass flywheel reaching the end of its service life and turbo failure. If you can find one with either of these replaced, then take it as a positive buying sign. Moving on to the N47D20 unit fitted from mid-2007 onwards, and things change. These engines are vastly updated and have gained a fairly poor reputation for reliability, although we will stress that hundreds of thousands of 3 Series were sold with this 2-litre diesel engine, and so although some will say avoid it at all cost, it is wise to put the failure rates in the context of the majority that have clocked up over 150,000 miles without failures. Even so, you should look into buying one of these with your eyes open to potential issues. Power ranges from 174 to 181 brake horsepower on the 320 diesel, depending on the age. Some markets were offered a 316 diesel model with 114 brake horsepower, and the 318D came in with 141 brake horsepower. Expect all models to achieve around 50 miles per gallon, with the lower power versions having officially quoted figures of 60.2 miles per gallon. Common problem areas are the DPF unit, the cooling system, the turbocharger, the dual mass flywheel, and probably the best known issue, the timing chain. At the risk of putting you off this unit entirely, we'll say that when we make these guides, we always quote a common failure as between 1 to 5% of production models. However, unfortunately the N47 diesel engine has faced legal challenges over its timing chain fault, which can stretch and cause catastrophic engine failure, and with its placement being difficult for mechanics to get to, a replacement timing chain can be an expensive job. Service history is key to purchasing an M47 motor, and privately owned cars from new that have had shortened service intervals seem to fare much better than others. We'd be keen to hear from owners of the N47 D20 engine in the comments section. Hopefully a mix of good and bad stories will help potential buyers. One thing we have noted is that although many of these issues don't disappear on newer cars, the 2010 onwards models were revised and seem to fare much better on overall reliability scores. If looking at the 325D, 330D or 335D, you'll avoid the 2-litre 4-cylinder engine entirely, as all are fitted with a 3-litre 6-cylinder engine. All 335 diesel models have an M57 unit, whereas early 325D and 330 cars get the M57 and 2008 onwards models get the N57 D30 unit. Far fewer complaints are recorded on the 3-litre diesel, but that doesn't make them perfect. Early 325 and 330 diesels producing between 194 and 228 brake horsepower, along with the 335D making 282 brake horsepower. Miles per gallon is between 42.8 and 45.6 for the 3 motors. EGR valves creating excessive carbon buildup in the cylinders is a known issue that appears to affect the 335D worse than the other two. Swirl flaps are commonly identified by owners as problematic, and the harmonic balancer and engine mounts will need replacing once the engine reaches around 100,000 miles. Aside from this, DPF filters can become problematic. Oil leaks around the intake manifold and thermostat failure are another common fault. However, this engine has a strong reputation for reliability, and it doesn't take much searching to find examples with over 200,000 miles across the BMW lineup. Next up are the petrol engines, and there are now 3 units to choose from, starting with the 2-litre 4-cylinder, then the 3-litre 6-cylinder, and finally the turbocharged 3-litre. We have done a separate video for the M3 with the 4-litre V8, and we'll link that at the end of the video. Starting with the 4-cylinder fitted to the early 318i and 320i, the N46B20 unit produces either 127 or 148 brake horsepower with an average of 37.2 miles per gallon. This motor had been around for quite some time when it was slotted into the early E90 and E91 models, and so they are generally considered reliable, although they can feel slightly strained if you regularly carry more than a single passenger. 2 things to make sure of when looking for one are a robust service history with proof of decent oil being used for services, otherwise it can lead to faulty valve stem seals. Second are vibrations caused by the vanos system. Before any purchase, make sure you listen to the engine run at idle. Any slapping or clicking noise around the timing chain could be a faulty chain tensioner or stretched chain. If so, then either negotiate a deal so that you have the budget to have this rectified, or walk away. In 2007, a 316i model was introduced but was unpopular. This shared the newer N43 architecture with the updated 318i and 320i that were fitted with the N43B20. Note the 316i is fitted with the N43B16. Due to how unpopular the 316i was, we won't cover it specifically, but any faults on the larger displacement N43 will likely still apply. The 318i had a power increase to 141 brake horsepower, and the 320i was up to 168 brake horsepower, making these feel much more sprightly. Average miles per gallon was quoted in around 34.9, and although this is an official drop from the earlier motor, owners reported it more in line with real-world use. Unfortunately, the M43 isn't considered a particularly reliable engine, similar to the M47 2-litre diesel we've already covered. Among the major concerns are timing chain failures, which are costly to repair. Fuel injectors and oil pumps are also a somewhat common failure point, and the latter usually recording a low pressure warning. Among the less expensive maintenance items are failures with the cooling system, as long as they are caught early and don't cause other damage, and looking out for oil leaks around the valve covers. We would once again stress that a well-kept example with good service history and oil changes that have been done in shorter intervals than BMW advise can still be a good buy, as long as you know what to look for. Moving on, we'll make a special note of the 320 SI that is so often forgotten. Only 2,600 were built to celebrate BMW's World Tour Car Championship. The 320 SI has an N45 B20 unit, creating 171 brake horsepower. Rarity alone will likely bring it to classic status in time, but this isn't just a slight tune of the 2-litre engine in other BMWs. The cylinder liners are aluminium and the bore and stroke are slightly increased, there is no Valvetronic induction system and the brakes are larger, sitting behind a set of unique wheels to the 320 SI. Having driven one, we would say that yes, you can feel the difference when driven against a standard BMW 320i M Sport model. However, it is a subtle change to the experience that only enthusiasts will likely appreciate. Due to the extensive reworking of the motor and its rarity, each one should be viewed on a case-by-case basis, rather than looking for common faults, as it would be incorrect for us to attempt to identify a common issue on such a low volume vehicle. Just finding one for sale will probably be the greatest challenge. Next up is the N52 in the 323i and 325i at 2.5 litre capacity, along with the 3 litre in the 328 and 330i at 3 litre capacity. Power ranges from 174 brake horsepower in the early 323i and climbs from there to 200, 215 and 255 brake horsepower. Expect fuel economy of around 31 miles per gallon, with a variance of 1 to 2 miles per gallon across the different models. By the time the N52 was fitted to the E90X generation vehicles, it was well understood by BMW and had gone through several revisions. This makes it one of the more robust units on our list, but look out for any oil leaks or coolant leaks, particularly around the thermostat or oil filter housing. Vanos units and hydraulic lifters are the more expensive of the issues that these engines can face. However, the BMW 3 Series with this motor will now be 15 years old, and this is generally considered to be one of the better units to look out for if reliability and lower running costs are top of your list. The N53 motor was fitted to the 325i, 328i and 330i from 2007, creating 215, 231 and 268 brake horsepower. Fuel economy is widely debated, as it is with the earlier 6-cylinder, as driving style can make quite a difference, so we'll stick with an estimate of 31 miles per gallon. For enthusiasts of the brand, the M53 is a watershed moment in BMW history, being the last time the badging convention stuck with 6 cylinders for all motors in the 323i and above. Common issues on these are a little harder to identify, as there are an array of owner reports, but we have narrowed it down to the problems to failures of the high pressure fuel pump, spark plug and coil issues, and failed fuel injectors. We also found some specialists that mentioned the NOx sensors and oil leaks from failed gaskets. On the more powerful models of the regular 3 Series lineup, we have the N54 engine fitted to the early 335i models from 2006 to 2009. This was the twin turbocharged unit making 305 brake horsepower that is replaced with a twin scroll single turbo in the N55 unit in 2010. One area of note for enthusiasts is that the very early examples are known to have a rear differential that can have a limited slip differential fitted. BMW quickly realised though that this would mean tuners would quickly be able to outshine the V8 powered M3, and so fitted an open differential that is more challenging to change. For most buyers that just want a fast BMW, this shouldn't be an issue, but if you are hoping to extensively modify an N54 engine, then one of the very early models may be a better starting point. The N54 engine is widely understood in the BMW specialist community, and a large aftermarket exists to support the motor. Among the most common complaints from owners are turbocharger and wastegate failure. Usually a wastegate rattle is the first sign to an owner of a potential turbo failure. High pressure fuel pump problems are another common issue. Fuel injectors and valve cover gasket failures are also somewhat common problems, and vanos solenoid failures are also recorded as a problem both by specialists and previous owners. Finally, the charge pipe is commonly found to fail at some point, and carbon buildup is a consistent complaint from owners. However, you are likely to find many enthusiast owners that are well aware of the issues and have rectified them. make sure they know what they're talking about and haven't just purchased the cheapest parts possible and done a poor job of fitting them though. The N55 unit has now been around for over a decade, and generally speaking the same list of common faults can apply, although some find the unit slightly less prone to some of the more common issues from the N54. We didn't mention fuel economy for this engine, as the reports from owners vary wildly depending on driving style. Official figures of 30.4 mpg is quoted. As ever, we have two picks of the bunch depending on budget. Those on a tighter budget that are concerned about running costs will be better with a pre-2007 320i or 320d with the older generation engine fitted. On the top end of the budget, a great condition 335i would be our pick, even though its running costs will be slightly higher. If performance is key to your buying decision, you'll likely enjoy our M3 buyer's guide next. Take care and best of luck on your car search.